Hi everybody, this is Chrissy from fulfil and Co-Impact Lounge. And today we have a very special guest. We have Eddy here from Thryft.sg. We're actually sitting in his store in the middle of Peace Center for Playpan's project. Now, we've spoken about Playpan a little bit by now, and at the same time, we understand about the dynamics of how to sustain a space of sustainability. But I want you to hear from one of the OGs of Playpan himself. Eddy here was the first person to come in to develop Thryft.sg. Right now it's Thryft Asia. And I just wanted to hear from the horse's mouth himself about what his plans are, where he thinks this is going, and of course, how he looks at sustainability and if we are ready for it. So, over to you. Can you tell us a little bit about who is Eddy and how did Thryft actually start?
Okay, yeah. So I studied in US College. I did computer science there. So Thryft started when I was in year 2. We started with a group of friends, and together there were 5 of us as co-founders. So some I knew from like Jerry, who's still one of our co-founders, I know from our orientation group. Then some I know from NS, and some I know from my junior college. Yeah. So back then the idea was really to think about how we can recirculate low-cost goods very effectively and efficiently, because we saw a problem there. So for example, if you are planning to sell like 3 books on your own on Carousel, you have to deal with 3 different buyers, negotiations, meetups. It's a lot of like hassle and opportunity cost, but not a lot of value in return, right? So the idea was like to really think of something that we can use to unlock this value and put that on a platform where it becomes accessible. Yeah. So a fun fact that I always like to share is that there is an average of 52 books per household in Singapore.
52?
Yeah, and we have about 1.3 million households. So that puts it at close to 70 million books just locked up in this little island. Right. So when we can't access this value, and people think, there's some value there, I don't want to throw it away, so I keep it. So this 70 million books just becomes dormant over time. And at some point in time, 5-10 years later, I give up on trying to unlock them. I throw them away, which is such a pity, because these exact same books are being bought new every day. Right. So that's really how we are thinking about this problem and trying to think about, okay, how can we create a solution that can then recirculate this amount of books back out and make it accessible and affordable for everyone.
Yeah, and I can see the value in that, but you're also in direct competition with Carousel, eBay, Amazon, that does reselling of books as well. And how has that worked out?
I think there's a few ways to look at it. So one is, I think fundamentally re-commerce as a sector, like even the term re-commerce itself is quite unheard of, right? It's quite a small sector.
Yeah.
But really, rather than thinking of I'm stealing each other's pie, is like can we make the pie grow a lot bigger? That's one way to look at it, right? Of course, like we don't have as much reach as these platforms at the beginning, so we will suffer. So in the first few years, it was particularly tough trying to build our own brand. But I think we were quite fortunate as well that there was fairly significant following that we did manage to grow in the early years, even through COVID times. Yeah, so I think people did think that, okay, this idea is new, it's interesting, right? And I would just give you a follow and see what's happening with it.
No, I mean, that would be the perfect time actually, because during COVID time, you're stuck at home. And of course, what do you do in your spare time besides declutter your home?
Right.
And I think by far that would be also the best time to give people the opportunity to see how they can actually get some returns from their pre-loved goods, right?
Yeah, but it was really a struggle because back then we were still figuring out how to do the logistics, because straight out of pilot we went to circuit breaker. So it was a time when movement was totally controlled. Like you could only have say one staff go back at different intervals.
That must have been a perfect time to start, because everybody's decluttering their homes, and instead of just throwing stuff away, this would be one way to be able to get some value back.
Yeah, true. But it was also particularly hard for us because we were still figuring out logistics, and we went straight into circuit breaker. So at that point in time, we had to figure out a way to not just like figure out how to do e-commerce, right? How to do all the orders, packaging, and do it in the way that we wanted it to, which is like zero plastic. That means we had to wrap every single order ourselves by hand with paper and twine, and then cope with the manpower, which is basically what happened was that we rotated. So say Monday, I will go to where the books are, wrap the orders. Whatever I could get done that day, I left it on the table. Then the next day, someone else would go. So that just went on for the week.
Oh my gosh, that must have been insane because that was the half and half.
Yeah.
Right? And you would not be able to go back into work. But wouldn't you be able to get around that? Like work from home or something?
Oh, because the books were all stored elsewhere.
Yeah.
So what we could do at home, yes, we could do. But if you had to deal with any inventory, basically you had to
go all the way down to the store, wrap it up.
Exactly. Yeah.
But how do you do the deliveries? Isn't that the most the most expensive part of the whole process?
Right. So, I mean, at the beginning, we had to figure out, even which courier to use.
Yes.
And one major sign that we were still brand new to the thing is that we were in this little room in a shop house on second or the third floor, I think the third floor. So obviously, it's not very suitable for logistics, especially when you're dealing with books.
Yes.
So you have to carry all the thing up, and then and down a bit, and then carry all the orders back down.
Well, you're going to get very, very strong glutes, but...
Yeah, so we really had to figure out how to do all this during that time.
I'm sure it would have been a really steep learning curve, to say the least. And I mean, just before we were talking here, you also told me that this was not your first rodeo, right? And you actually did think about stopping earlier on, but you're here. And not only are you here, but you've actually doubled down on the entire premise, and the real estate is doubled. You've got the biggest store in P Center. Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we've always been doing online at the beginning, and we just did events whenever we could, right? So whenever the government regulations were a bit looser with regards to doing public events, then we would hold a book fair back then. So after most of the restrictions were relaxed, then we started doing what is now called the Thryft Weekend Garden. So we did an iteration of that with projector at the Cat Day.
Yeah.
I think we did 2 iterations of that actually. Yeah. So it was good, really helped to build up more awareness about Thryft and have a chance for us to showcase the inventory that we do have. But it was also very, very hard logistically, because you could imagine moving thousands of books and clothes in just for 2 weekends, and then moving everything out again.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's a limit to how much experience we could build, because it's very temporal. You at most have a couple of hours to set things up.
Yeah.
So even though you might pre-plan this the layout and this the categories that we're gonna go for, that's really the max you can do, and just have that couple of hours to lay out according to inventory, according to what was packed in your boxes.
Yeah.
And you don't have a chance to really build something more within that space. Yeah.
That's true. That's true, because even if you have regular customers or loyal fans, they wouldn't know how to follow up, right?
Yeah. And in terms of the shopping experience, right, there's an extent how much you could do. So say that for clothing, we could try our best to sort it by a certain style or curation, or say sort by a certain type, but there is a restriction how much you could do in a couple of hours. So with all of that in mind, then we knew that the model works, but we needed something that could last for a longer duration, right? So we saw this as a good opportunity to actually build a blueprint of how we could build a space if we do have this enough space. So that's when we came into Playpan, and that's also one of the reasons why we want that space, because we know that it works in that sense, but we also wanted to try out for a long duration and try and build an experience that all of us had in mind but never had the chance or the time to actually do it. A lot of what you see here in the center is a manifestation of what has been for quite some time. And the ideas around here, we want a whole space for books or whole space for clothes. We want to do a few curations, we have vintage and rare books and book curation, etc. It's all something that has been in our minds for a while, but never had a chance to do it up. Yeah, so yeah, this is actually quite a strong realization of like the ideals that have been set in place for a long time. Yeah.
No, I think that's really powerful. That's the one thing that we don't have in Singapore, right? The luxury of space.
Yeah, exactly.
The tiny dot in the ocean. Some globes even, or some maps even, just have us represented by a star. And because we're too small to actually even put on the map. And space is incredibly expensive here in Singapore. So actually having the ability to express, and to expand on your dream or your vision of what Thryft could actually become, I think that's really powerful. But at the same time, I mean, just so that we can actually have a better understanding of this, like, what is Playpan? When we talk about Playpan taking over Peace Centre, now Peace Centre we already know is one of the old malls in Singapore that's due to be demolished in a few months' time. And that's going to be a question later on in the conversation. But at the same time, what is Playpan and what is it to you?
So I had the chance to work with Yvonne and Gary over the last couple of months and really try and understand what they are building here. And I think what I learned from them is that they have really turned a very precious commodity, which is space in Singapore, right, into something that can allow different social impact projects, companies, initiatives to actually have a chance to test their ideas over here. And what Yvonne calls it is social impact hub, right? And
social impact hub, I like that.
In Singapore, right? And I think that's powerful, right? So from the very first day, I think, of speaking with Yvonne and Gary, what I learned from them is that, they want to do a lot of impact, like be it social or environmental impact, but they also want it to be sustainable in that sense. So it's not something that purely relies on, 100% volunteer, 100% like sacrificing one's own time, effort to actually do something, but also something that fundamentally works as an ideal, as a model. So this is a chance, I think, to utilize the space here to test our ideas and to find something that works and to build that meaning and the engagement with our communities that would otherwise be very hard to build, right? Like, so in one way, it's like, okay, we want to test business model here, but I could also see for other spaces, like say Circular Classroom, which is just downstairs, right? If they don't have the space, it's hard for them to build a community, it's hard for them to share and to get the initial kind of ball rolling. Okay, this is what we are doing, this is where we are holding a drop-off point, this is where we are doing this and that, which is very, very hard to come by. Which is a lot of the struggles that we had at the beginning as well, just getting somewhere to allow us to put a drop-off point. Yeah, so I see it really as like a impact hub, and turning this space into something that could potentially sprout a lot more into various projects that will carry forward in the long run.
No, I think social impact is, it was a buzzword that nobody really understood what it really meant, right? And I mean, it could go into so many different directions, but I think the way that you actually phrased it, I love it, right? Because it gives us a picture, a very, very concrete picture about what are the difficulties that you actually face and how you had to overcome it, and how other people are also being able to utilize just a space, like a HQ, if you want to put it in that way, right? So that people will know where they are, come to try to check it out and find out more about it, and then have the loyalty to come back and grow as a community. I think this is really important, and this is something that has been slowly weeded out of any community, even in schools, where now, for some reason, we don't have a classroom anymore. It's, universities are all going with a modulated structure. So, I do feel it creeping in, like we have no real foundation for a community to come and just hang out, like what I used to have in my past.
Yeah, and I think being quite grateful with like how the community has responded. So even in this last few weeks where we kind of announce and make it more known that the space will be closing soon in January, and then a lot of people actually came to us and asked us about, okay, where are you guys gonna go, right? And so they're actually like really looking out for, like, they're saying that whenever you guys go next, we will want to visit, like we want to keep updated. So it really helps to build a community with the space. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I have so much to say about that. I, I shall not, because I mean, in Singapore, I've come from the education industry, and so many times where we were just looking for just spaces where we can have like pop-up exhibitions and shows and art, art performance, or poetry recitals, or even just little nooks and crannies that we would be able to just rent. We're not coming without money. They would rather not have the hassle of cleaning up, security, any worries of how we might destroy the place and leave it empty than to let us the space, right? So, yeah, I think it's also because we're coming from an arts community. What are your thoughts about that? Like, is Singapore actually going to be ready for this kind of, I don't know, structure, system?
I think in general, I can see quite strong public community interest for what's being built here. So there is quite a lot of people who pay attention to what's happening here. They reach out and to get the public interested in what we are building here hasn't been as difficult in some places as we were in the past, in that sense, just to get people to come. But I guess the really difficult part is about, I think we discussed this a little bit earlier, which is on commercial viability, right? So it's finding the people who would allow such projects to happen, right? So I guess it's on another level. So when you mentioned, okay, I have this space now, right? I might not even want to let people come in to have it here, but this is on another level where the mall or some space owner would they allow these kind of projects to manifest in the first place. And they're quite grateful, I think, to what Plapan has done together with
CEO.
CEO and new mall owners to allow such a space to manifest. Right. So that is like, it goes out a few layers to even allow that in the first place.
Yeah, man, by far it comes to a level of trust as well, right?
Yeah.
Trust that, and I mean, I love how we're talking about it like it's the greatest social experiment of our lifetime. To try to see whether if we build it, will they come?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to harp on this earlier on, but there it is. It keeps coming back up. We're going to demolish and shut this space in just a few months' time. How long was the promise, and how much longer do we have?
Yeah. So when we started on 2nd September. Actually, the idea was for 6 months to run until end February. But we recently got the news that it has to end earlier, by end of January. So there will be 5 months for us.
Yeah. I think that's also because they kind of saw how long it took for us to get it up and bring stuff in. So they're probably making allowances for us to clear our stuff out, right? And it's very, very sad to see that all this gold. You have pretty much built this place up and put in the most effort in reconditioning the space to what it is right now. Like, what did it take to get this place looking the way it is?
Okay, I must give credit to City Music. I think they have built a wonderful space that we are very grateful to be using right now. And maybe some of the units we did have to do some extra work, where just to convert it more to what we had in mind in terms of building up the different spaces. So, for example, the current books room used to be an office and a storeroom. And because of by that nature, it wasn't intended for retail, right? So we had to remove some fake walls and clean up the entire space and repainted the walls, etc. Yeah, and even that door, I think, was the original intention was a storeroom, right? So that door was never in use for I don't know how many years. But
I mean, the glass door leading out to the staircase.
yeah, so that door actually wasn't in use at all, and the whole area there, the glass area had the decal over the sticker. Yeah, basically that whole site wasn't in use. So, but to build it the way we wanted to, we had to do some extra work to actually convert it to a retail space. Then alongside with that is like a couple of the other units, to turn it up into the space, like to fit the concepts, like for the vintage and rare books room, the books on the room on the curated themes that we have, and also the closed room at the end of the whole row. Yeah.
So you've pretty much taken up like a quarter of the second floor, just on the.
Is it a quarter?
It's a quarter. Okay, maybe 1/8. It feels like a quarter. I mean, of the second floor.
Right.
And you were the earliest one. I would say you're the OG of Playpan, right? And you were the first one in. But it wasn't as smooth running as we all know it.
Yeah.
I've spoken to Gary, and we did news about it. We can laugh about it now, but it certainly wasn't funny when it began.
Yeah.
The 50-year-old icon just decided to die on us on the night that we took over the key. Can you tell us about that ordeal and how did that go through for you?
We invested quite a lot into this space, and it was a big part of our plans. And as a very small startup, we don't have that much room to maneuver when the major plans go wrong.
Yep.
Right. So it was a very, very big concern for us when it seems that there were a lot of difficulties around getting the whole place started. Right. So as you know, the AC broke down for the entire mall because it runs on central air conditioning, which means that none of our units had AC. Right. And I think that's one part of the problem. The other part of the problem is because the AC broke down, all the other units were also delayed. People were hesitating on whether they wanted to come in at all, because if there was no AC, they were like, I have to do these extra things to get the whole space running.
And increased cost.
Exactly. And those who were already coming in to set up delayed their setup. Those who were thinking about taking out the space delayed their decision. Right. So when it happened on the 2nd September when we opened, we were pretty much the only unit that was open without AC. Yeah. So we did put in a few more steps where we tried to put up 2 ACs in our units, but honestly, it's not sufficient to cover what was the original
The space itself, that I would say HDB size aircon unit, was just not enough, right?
And there were a few units as well that basically wasn't covered, right?
Yeah.
So what we had to do extra is to bring in air coolers. So we had 2 huge air coolers that we borrowed from Gary. We have 2 industrial fans that we borrowed from Gary. We had to buy more air coolers to put all around. And by nature of the air coolers, they
spit out water.
Yeah, and they need you to constantly freeze the ice packs, or they are just basically fans. Yeah. So there were a lot of extra work involved. And then
boy, do I remember that.
Yeah, but that's exactly why I also mentioned about how the community is actually very receptive to it. That despite all of this, we have people coming and people talking about the space positively despite the heat. Yeah, so that's something that we are grateful for, that we still managed to get started despite all of those.
Yeah, no, I remember the early days, and I remember that your space was the only space with air conditioning at that time, and Gary and I used to just come in here all the time just to steal a little bit of aircon. And I personally watched the growth of you painting the wall from the the office, previously known as office, and how the space just started getting students to friends to I don't know, the community did grow, and they would bring their friends, they would, do their IG posts which always helps.
Yeah.
So please come in and do your IG posts.
Yeah.
And
you can even see the walls now full.
Yeah.
Start out with just that little sign over there. And the blackout poetry wall as well. Started with just a few, but now it's completely full.
Yeah, no, I love this love note wall, and later on we're gonna go and just do a little bit of a scan.
Right.
It is so reminiscent of the New York post-it wall, which went on for stretches across the whole subway, and it really shows the gratitude from the community, and it really is evident that you're doing a great job, and there is this gap that needs to be filled. Let's talk about that gap. That's really, I mean, we're flowing right into it right now. It's let's talk about sustainability. Used to be frowned upon word, right? But I think right now it's the meaning of it has broadened. It's not just about sustainability in climate change. It's not about sustainability in planet anymore. It's sustainability in humans as well. It's like, if I can't live, if I can't pay my bills, what's the point of, doing so many things outside when I just got to look after my home first and fill my cup before I can actually move things on. And we know that coming off the COVID, we're all suffering, right? It's like, I've never seen so many students, so many youths going through depression. It's ridiculous. It never used to be the case. And what used to be something that we could, chuckle about and say, suck it up and carry on in my time. And we can't say that anymore because this is really tough times, right? But what we're trying to do over here and how you've actually, I love the way that you spoke about it, right? It's like the way that you said, it's about space, it's about community, it's about finding that social impact problem that means something to you and how you can actually find a way to help out. We're not talking about solving anything, but it helps to know about it, to talk about it, and to try to find a way to help each other out as a community. So could you please tell us about this issue that you found to be your social impact project, and how are you trying to raise that discussion about sustainability in this area?
I personally got interested into sustainability when I did realize that a person's own efforts do add up to be a lot. So I think I've told this story a few times, but it really is the moment that I started thinking about it, which is that I was working at another startup back then. And so because I'm such a big fan of drinking coffee, so I would drink at least 2 cups a day.
Amen.
Yeah. So thinking about I was talking to a friend back then and just thinking about say over the last couple months, I must have generated at least 100 cups all by myself. Because back then I didn't bring around tumblers at all. I just buy and then after I'm done with it, I just throw away. Right? You don't think about so much of it in isolation. But when you think about it as a whole, I imagine all 100 cups as a result of my own efforts. And then that's when it started to make a bit just made me think about this whole problem, right? And when you think about goods in excess and all that, a long time down the road, then I realized that there is this kind of problems in many other areas, and eventually it came down to low-cost goods, which is books, clothes, all this kind of lower value items that we find very hard to recirculate on our own. So at the beginning, we were thinking about, whether we should do books or do clothes first. Thryft didn't started out because we love books in that way. The idea was always for low-cost goods, and this is why you don't really see books in Thryft's name. We are not like Thryft books or whatever, right? We were thinking about really building this really circular economy and having multiple verticals, and that's when your credits eventually become more powerful. So which is where you can trade in books and get clothes and vice versa, right? So that's what we have always been interested in building at the beginning, but it took us a long time to finally get to clothes. Yeah, but I think throughout these few years, I've been quite grateful at seeing how the community has really changed around thrifting. It has become so much more receptive. I think you can see the evidence of that by having even within NUS back then, you would see organic student groups doing thrift pop-ups, right, organizing themselves to create these kind of spaces where people could exchange, could swap, or could thrift from each other, which is evidence to us that this thing is something that people are interested in, something that is picking up and building and gaining popularity. So I think in that way, we're very fortunate to see how the trend has been continuing in this direction. Yeah, and where we see ourselves is really trying to bring that accessibility by building tech for it, right? So we want to help contribute to the problem, and we want to contribute to the solution. Yeah, but we want to think about how to do that at scale.
Yeah.
Right. So the vision is really to build something that can allow us to very efficiently process not just tens of hundreds, but really tens of thousands and millions of items at scale and make that accessible to everyone, eventually not just people in Singapore, but people in the region as well, which is why we adopted the Asia into the name. Yeah, so that's really what we think about for this. Yeah, I mean, along the way, I think just to touch a little bit, or I think you mentioned this earlier in one of the questions as well, but I didn't answer that. This is the sustainability from the human perspective. Yeah, this is a very lofty ambition, and I don't think we are near there yet. We are really trying to get there, but so along the way, it's really been quite difficult often, and I think I'm quite grateful to my team for that. Yeah, so people who are actually in this space right now, even as we get started on this, there are many months where things get really difficult, and we often have delays, and we often have to really make do with very little resources. Almost everything you see in this space is all secondhand. Yeah, for example, like, because we really just like make use of whatever we can find, whatever we can take. Yeah.
Exhibit A.
Yeah. And actually this is someone left it and threw it out on the third floor of the center. But we just adopted it here.
No, it's great.
Yeah, so like almost everything here has to be worked at the conference, and our team really stuck through all of it to get this space running. Yeah.
Well, that's meta experience, isn't it? I mean, the three things that really stuck out to me that I wanted to bring up was, the first one is we were looking for, the best solution to counter fast fashion, for example, right? I mean, there's fashion parade downstairs, that was also trying to bring the awareness into this space for like the last 2 or 3 years. And thankful to COVID, the machine stopped, right? And I don't know where it was. I think the statistics was in the first month of lockdown across the world, 2,000 retail shops closed because the machine stopped. I was like, oh, that's a happy. I can't even say happy. Actually, it's like you can't say put happy next to COVID.
Yeah.
But that was something good that came out of it. And fast forward until today, I think everybody kind of understands that, well, number one, we have so much clothes due to the crazy churn of, fast fashion, that we were kind of like just zombies, just going with the trend because there was just no time to stop and think and breathe. This forced pause, this global forced pause, I think was really beneficial for us in many, many ways, because we could take stock of what we had mentally and physically in our home. And I think that it's really timely that Thryft came around during this period, because it gave people a solution when everybody's thinking like, what can one person do? And it is true, one person can't do a lot, but this is not one person. You and your team have created something so amazing that this point number 2, university students took your brand, and used it in their communities. I think that's wonderful validation in that sense, that they believe that this is something that they wanted to see carry on. They saw this as a viable option. I remember about clothes swapping in car boot market spaces and car boot sales and stuff like that as well, but that might be trending as well. And this is certainly a more concrete example of how we could have this run for the long run, right? Now I'm going to go to point number 3. Can you explain to us about that tech that actually helps to make this system a little bit more viable? Because we've been trying everything, right? But of course, with the inclusion of technology nowadays, you've made it so much faster, so much more accurate, and there is now a baseline of what we can fall back on to understand about quality, maybe a little bit about history. Like, how did you make this happen? Like, explain to us, like, how does Thryft Asia work?
So the idea is to build resale tech to be able to classify, price, and inventorize the items, right? So to do this tech, we have actually built our own pipeline behind that.
Okay.
So for example, for classification, right? So we just use the ISBN, which is located at the back of every single back of the book. You just have to scan it in, and actually the scrapers automatically gather the information for the book. So, for example, what are the current first-hand prices? What are the rating and reviews of the prices? And other metadata like publisher, author, publication date, etc. All of that helps to sort out, give the information about the book. And then we have a separate model. Initially, it was really just a set of algorithm with weights to predict what its current second-hand value is. Because if you think about it, if you were to price the item on Carousel, how would you do it? You will find, currently this is what the first-hand store is selling at. I think the book was quite popular, so I'll price it at this, right? A factor of the first-hand pricing, right? So it's really bringing that whole process into first a set of weights, an algorithm, and then over time, because we have our own sales data where we adjust for how fast a book actually moves, and then we turn it into an ML model where we train on it, right? So that's how the pricing is done. And then to inventorize it, we have a unique problem. So most e-commerce stores have lower SKU, thousands of quantities. We have the inverse of that. We have huge number of SKUs, but we only have like 1 to 2 in quantity for each of the item. So we built our own inventory system behind that to support this kind of structure, right? And then from there, add in all the different features of it, right? So automatically, like say, generate and manage trades and send credits to users, automatically upload into the store once the staff marks that it's actually shelved, and basically manage most of these processes in a semi-automated way. So we enable each staff to do so much more when they're actually processing the items. So that is for books. And then when we move into clothes, we thought about, let's figure out.
Wait. Oh, Johan, that's insane. That is insane. Did you and your team build this whole system yourself?
Yeah, and along some past interns and ex-team members that were part of the team.
That is insane. That is a lot of work that you've pretty much used technology to help you grab data that's already existing in the ecosystem that we didn't know what the data was going to be used for. You've used it successfully, number one. Number two, you've actually found a way to then inventory everything based on, I mean, we all know, anybody doing retail, that's the hardest part, right? And keep stock and just keep that. I don't even have the words for it. I'm not going to pretend that I know, but this really looks like you've done an insane amount of work by yourselves. How big is your team?
We are just about 6 people. Yeah, quite a small team, but we have a team of part-timers with us who help us manage the inventory, help us manage cash.
Of course.
And,
And then, of course, and above and beyond that, you've also managed to incorporate machine learning to help you to, price generate and take stock of all your books. Do you know where they are in every store as well?
Well, we know the stock that's in here, but physically, because people browse.
So that's the next step. You can microchip it and know where it goes in the world. You could even, mint that shit and then be able to track that everywhere you go. And then we use that same system. I put it into I was gonna say put the chip into my children, but again, but that's crazy insane. You guys are amazing. You've actually found a system that helps a lot of these gaps.
Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, we're still trying to make it work.
Well, yes. Now tell me more. Tell me about how you're doing it with floats as well.
Yeah. So the idea was always to start off with books because it has a very strong and robust database, and then translate what works into another vertical. Right. So we started looking at clothes after. And clothes have a unique challenge in the sense that you can't just use the book cover. You have to actually show a photo of the clothing itself to whoever wants to buy it online. Right. So we actually looked into that and thought that actually these images can be a source of data as well. We figured out a way to make use of some of the recent advancements. So say using AI we build an app where you take a photo of the clothing. So the AI can crop up the clothing and then enhance it so that it looks a little bit like it's taken in a studio without actually having the full studio setup, which would cost quite a bit of money.
Correct.
And then treat the images as source of data. So we train different models. So think of it as like each model is in charge of one specific role. So I'm in charge of the type. So it's just a top model. Yeah. Then afterwards, if there's a top name, pass it on to the next model, what kind of top it is. Right. And then pass it on to another model. What's the sleeve length? What's the color? What's the pattern, etc. Right. So it takes time to build each model and to train it so that it's accurate. But once it's done, it's added to the pipeline, and it takes less than a second to predict what the actual attribute is. So over time, when you actually process the items, you take a photo of it. I put in some information that has to be inputted. So things like measurement, like we don't rely on just the AR for that, because that wouldn't be really accurate. Things like the brand, which you can't really find unless you really go and examine the tag, right? But the rest of it, like we don't ask the staff to actually figure out what color it is, what pattern it is, etc. Which is because all of this takes a lot of time, right? But if you could use tech to actually make that process faster, then you could process the whole item very quickly. And then fundamentally the rest of it is the same, right? That's inventory and all that. It just goes into the same pipeline, it gets uploaded. But because you cut down the time to something that's manageable, you can apply this to low-cost goods, right? I mean, if you weren't doing low-cost goods, you were doing design and clothing, sure, you could have just taken every single thing manually and the margin still makes sense. But you can't do that for low-cost items, right? So that's where we have kind of applying this as well to clothing. But clothing, I would say, is still in its early stage in that sense. So we have the basic pipeline working to upload clothing, which is what you can see on our website already, which has been processed through the app. But we are still adding more models to it so that there will be more attributes that automatically get populated, which makes your whole browsing experience smoother.
Wow, you really use AI and tech and machine learning to just expedite the entire process and clean up the total pipeline. I mean, kudos to you for putting in that labor's effort in the front part of it, of course. We know how much effort that actually takes, right? Because you got to train every single item, color. I mean, this helps you to solve that problem. Is this a gold dress or a black dress, right? I really love the way that you have actually tried to find a solution for, I mean, everybody has stuff, right? And then off camera, we were also talking about how space might be one of the biggest issues that we have that has indirectly influenced our culture, the way that we think and the way that we behave with our stuff, right? I mean, if we had space, we would keep it and we would host it or gift it to the later generations. It affects us as well that, we are only 50 plus years old as a nation, and anything that we hold, it could be our family heirloom, that we can pass down through generations, and we can start from here. But of course, if there is a lack of space, then there is also a lack of nostalgia. There's a lack of there's just no space, figuratively as well as physically, to be able to hold on to anything old. And we would like to keep a clean environment about us, and a lot of the time that would also mean to throw. However, I think that this has also affected the youth and us in general, where we don't fix what we own and we'll just take and buy for new, because everything is so cheap nowadays anyway. I think what you've actually created down here is one way to not only stave our culture from having this use and throw culture moving forward, but it also makes us pause and remember to value our past, whether it's just in some sense starting from stuff, right, that we hold from our previous generations, or the old stuff, and we try to just fix it, which in turn can actually move on to fixing relationships instead of just throwing right, when things start to break. And you don't see me going you're a bad kid, I'm going to throw you, you're up for adoption. No, it's not like that. We need to find a way to just have this impact one stage or one area of our lives, and then let that roll over in every other area. And this culture of loving the old and letting that bleed into the new. And we're both in startup, and this is something that I hold close to me ever since I heard it the first day that I went for a hackathon was how we do anything is how we do everything. And I love what you're trying to do here in the space. Dare I say CSR? And, I think in many ways we're trying to find a new way of doing CSR in Singapore. Do you think it's working? Or what's your take on that?
You mean for Playpan as a whole model?
For Playpan as a whole model, and how, I don't really want to say this now, but do you think we're ready? First, what is your take on the CSR in Singapore, on the CSR model of just getting people to come out and just be more interactive? It's no longer taking a check and being transactional about the whole thing and just showing people that you're giving money anymore. It's about being on the ground and having that interaction. I think that's really interesting and impactful. I think this actually brings us all back into this one idea that it's no longer enough to just pay your way through, right? I mean, you do good, you feel good, you look good, you share good. People get infected by seeing somebody do good. And that's why we want to share this effort, right? And I think what you're doing right now is so important for us to just see, right? It's just how you value materials, things, old stuff enough to want to let it have a second life. And how if somebody sees you do that, then you're creating a story that what we had is worth saving.
I think it's certainly more meaningful. I can see actually some organizations who reach out to us to CSR in a way of like us partnering up together where the organization actually collects on our behalf. And then as a whole, in their name, we process their items and have them to donate their credits to organization of their choice. Right? So, they could have easily just done the donation on their own, but they wanted to do something. Right? So going through that whole sometimes month-long process, setting up a box, collecting all of these things, I think that is something that shows that people are looking for more meaningful ways to engage. Yeah, and I think what Plapan has created here to have a space for that is really a great manifestation of that coming to reality when given more space and support of having a chance to do something like this. My personal perspective, I think, as one of the businesses that are here, I think that this CSR way, from the Playpan's perspective, has a lot more potential. Sometimes maybe even something that we cannot tangibly see right now. Because when we talk about it as a test bed for new ideas, for social initiatives, for projects, it could really lead to something so much bigger could be a few months, could be a few years, could be 5-10 years. But it all started because someone was willing to give us a chance to do something here in the first place. For us, for example, we do want this to be a blueprint of how having a space like that could look like and could work for us, which would otherwise been almost impossible to do, because if you were going out there and doing it commercially, you would already have to fork out that huge initial cost just to try it, right? But being able to build that blueprint here and then they're going to people and showing them, this is what we have done, this is how it works, right? And this is actually like real concrete results. Despite it being short-lived, there's still a good significant period of time. Shows people that this works, maybe we could try this at somewhere that possibly could be more long-term, which is what our hope is, a part of this as well. And I think I can see it for a couple of the projects around here. For Tim runs a barber shop here. So Tim's tenacious cuts, right? So he always wanted to have his own space, try running a barber business, right? But yeah,
there's a barber shop here?
Yeah, just 2 units down from ours.
Oh my God, yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he started not too long ago.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, where else are you gonna be able to try it and get something rolling? I think, yeah, I like mentioned circular classroom as well.
I think you're right. I love the way that you phrased it, that this is a little bit longer than a pop-up, like the weekends that you would have, in other malls and so on. So it gives you a really nice runway to actually build a community, to have a unique experience, to create and find or discover, not really discover because you've already known it, but to amplify your USP. And I think people do need time. Like we're so used to this instant society. We just want things instantly, right? And we're just so pampered by technology that when we buy something, we want it now, right? We want to shop with it. I want to make this decision instantly. I want to, have a result as fast as I can so that I can forget about it and move on to the next thing, right? And I think especially in Singapore, but human conditioning doesn't happen so quickly. And we really, especially for community, we really need to find a way to have that space and that natural growth. Like you don't swipe right to get a date. You actually need to go through that awkward interaction, like, hey, hi, and that's when you actually really understand each other, through interactions and experiences with each other. And with time, the community will learn to trust and to grow and to want to support and to be loyal. Because without time, there isn't that longevity. And without longevity of experiences to actually groom or to foster relationships, like human beings are all about relationships, only then will we be able to talk about relational rather than transactional.
Yeah.
But we don't really have that much time. And this is the question that I was trying to avoid the entire conversation. What are you going to do with all this stuff, right? This beautiful thing that you've set up? And, I'm sure your community is also like at the edge of their seat trying to figure out what are you going to do after Peace Center gets demolished.
It's always difficult to figure out how do you make use of or hold on to something as best as you can, knowing that it's going to end within not that long of a duration, right? And we are really trying to make the best of use of the space that we can. And in this last 2 months, December, January, in fact, we have talked about it as a team. What we have chosen to do is to increase our inventory even further. Because we want to make the best use of it. We want a good ending to the space, and we want to really show at the end of the day that, this is the 5 months we have. This is a 5-month blueprint of what we could do for space like that. We want to show that and we want to have a good
go big or go home.
Yeah, exactly. The best use of the space that we can, in this last 2 months. Yeah. Of course, the question of what we do after, which is exactly like we're hoping that this blueprint, we could take it to show people that this is what we can do with a space like that, and try to find someone who will be willing to support us in that way, because we know that on a monthly basis it works. Well, at least when you look at this whole duration, it works. But to actually still do it commercially, you still need that very high initial cost. So we hope that, we can convince someone that this is worth trying out. And in the event that that doesn't work out for us for the time being, we will likely go into a hiatus. We will put everything back into our warehouse and wait for an opportunity to see where we can actually build this, at the next best location that we can find.
Oh, you're going to make me cry. But okay, yeah. I mean, I'm in no position to talk about this because I don't really know much about this space, right? But Playpan is known for bridging the old and the new. And the new, I'm talking about like Web3, going into metaverse, going into meta spaces. And of course, the other 50% of the space is all about thrifting, and reusing of old stuff and reuse, reduce, recycle, fostering relationships. Is there a way or a space that Thryft Asia is able to then, go into this metaverse and let us continue this relationship virtually?
Okay. I think for us, you always start out online.
Yeah.
So you might go into a hiatus, but you can always find us online.
Correct.
And that's the case. And in fact, online has a larger inventory than what you can find over here.
Yeah.
So that might be what we focus on building.
Before you go into Web3.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because, that's that's the other part of Playpan, right? Like, we can actually virtually go immersively into another space.
Right. Yeah.
Like having
Okay, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the Web3 angle for us yet.
Okay.
But we are interested in other forms of tech like AI and what it can do to help us really build this whole economy and system. So for example, something that I'm interested in is building a reverse search for thrifting. So if I see this particular clothing, I like it, I just take a photo on Thrift. It shows me most similar items on Thrift right now that I can get to what I've just taken a photo of.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. You could do that with so many things. Yeah.
So you could really enhance the whole thrifting experience, and I think tech can play such a strong role in that. Or even the personalized AI curator. When I go into Thrift's website, I want to see recommendations that are actually in stock right now on Thrift, specific to what I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where all AI can play a role in that I think will really enhance and bridge that online offline in a way. Right, making the online tools really work for you to find what you're looking for.
No, I think that's genius. If you're able to get that across, you can do that. I can see this tech being applied in so many different other spaces as well that could really enhance while living, reduce costs and also help people find solutions to a lot of things. It can be like medicinal as well. Yeah.
Right. But at the end of the day, I really do think that having a physical space is important.
It's very
to build
important.
community, build awareness, and that's something that likely we will always want to hold on to if possible. Having one so-called flagship space, but really a space that allow us to bring our inventory and allow people to really experience that thrifting and having the ability to really physically trade in things that I no longer want, and then be able to just find within this whole space what I would want instead, right? And having that space for us to build that community, run events, etc. I think it all really helps and it's quite important. So at the end of the day, we really want to still find a space, but we understand the constraints that come with these things that we don't always have the opportunity to. Right, so yeah, we make the best use of it right now. Hopefully, it really forms a great blueprint story and something that we are proud to show other people and see where that leads us to.
Well, don't hold your breath. I think there might be opportunities in Singapore, like the old airport, that might be a viable option. I think somebody might be looking into that. I think pre-COVID, there was somebody else that wanted to take that space, but there might be a possibility of that becoming a second Playpan.
I've actually been asking Gary as well, whether just for help and connections about possible spaces.
Yeah.
So he's also trying to look out for us. Yeah.
I think platform is most vital for communities, because only in our downtime where we sit down and just relax and communicate with just your environment, your people, we're all social beings, right? There's no such thing as work from home, really. We really need to be in an environment where we can interact. And I think that's where the most, creative, innovative ideas actually comes out. But when you're trying to build a community that actually values culture and, just being in a space where people value memories I think that's really significant. I think you're doing a great job. You and your team are doing a great job. You're doing a great job, guys. Okay, they're ignoring me.
Yeah, and they're so shy.
Just like yourself. Any last words? Maybe I think in a sense, Eddy's going to be around until the end of January. So please come down, do your Instagram posts,
Yes.
and tell everyone to come down and to support this so that we can show this as evidence that this system works.
And yeah, things are going to continue to improve all the way till January as well. Yeah.
Go big or go home.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Eddy. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
all this time.
Yeah.
And well, we hope to see a lot more of Thryft coming soon.